The valedictorian of the class of 2016, Daniel Austin Ruscher.
Family, friends, faculty, members of the Marianist community, and fellow graduates of the class of 2016. Welcome and good afternoon. The first time I stepped through the doors of KELLENBERG Memorial as a student was just under 7 years ago. It was September of 2009, and I was but a small boy. Today, I stand before you, a small man. And though the physical journey may have been somewhat unimpressive, the intellectual, emotional, and spiritual journeys have been deeply profound. That's not to say it was always easy. In fact, it was pretty rarely easy. But, as the character Schmidt from television's New Girl so eloquently put it, without ash to rise from, the phoenix would just be a bird getting up. And we've certainly had our fair share of ash. Between all the quizzes, tests, papers, projects, and trimesters, it's honestly astounding to me that we actually found the time to reach out to one another and develop the deep relationships that we have. But I guess it makes sense that our best friends would be not only the people we laughed with, but the ones we cried with as well. And unfortunately, there have been reasons for tears. Maybe a little too often. In late October of our freshman year, our island was struck by Hurricane Sandy. Almost everyone lost power, and many lost much, much more. And again, earlier this year, we lost one of our own. Shanique was, by all accounts, an ideal firebird. Someone who was talented, passionate, and creative. Many of you knew Shanique much better than I did, but it would have been clear to anyone who saw the outpouring of grief and love in the days and weeks following her passing that she was an amazing young woman, and that the world is just a little bit dimmer without her light. At times of great tragedy, such as Shanique's passing, or times of great change, like a high school graduation, there's always a natural hesitation. We're reluctant to turn the page, to end this chapter of our lives and start something new. And that's normal. How many of us wouldn't want to see Stephen Torrey make one more basket in a KELLENBERG uniform? Or hear Alexa Ford sing one more verse of Lord, I Need You? I know I certainly wouldn't mind taking just one more bow on the KELLENBERG stage. But we can't. That time has passed, and it's time now to move on. There's a common misconception that moving on means forgetting. That's not even a little bit true. In fact, it's just the opposite. Moving on means taking everything that we've learned from our courses, from our teachers, and from one another, and applying it in every act of our lives. Yes, our time with each other has ended. We will never have these 4 years again, and other than a diploma and maybe some pictures on Facebook, we may have very little permanent evidence to show for our time here besides our experiences. And that will be enough. The signatures that we leave on each other's hearts mean so much more than a signature in the yearbook possibly could. We are our own works of art, made in collaboration with each other. We carry our experiences within us, and the impact that we have on one another is perhaps the greatest contribution to the future that we can make. Our time with each other has ended, but its effects will last forever. Endings are rarely fun. Sometimes an experience is just so meaningful that when it's finished, one is filled with a deep sense of melancholy. However, there's also something remarkable about the temporary. Think of a flower, a sunset, a life. Inevitably, they all end. And somehow that makes them even more precious. After all, a thing is not beautiful because it lasts. I stole that last line from the second Avengers film because I am a nerd. Generally, valedictory speeches are supposed to end with some advice, a little bite-sized nugget of wisdom for you to keep in your pockets, take out in times of need. Unfortunately, I'm not really in any position to offer you advice, mostly because I'm just as clueless and frightened about this whole thing as you are. So I did what any teenager in the 21st century would do. I went to the internet in search of the perfect piece of advice to plagiarize. Cite properly, according to the format outlined in the official Kellenberg Memorial High School style sheet. When you type advice into Google, it spits back about 951 million results, confirming something I had already guessed. There is a lot of advice out there. It comes from world leaders and political figures, movies and musicals, novels and plays. Something that surprised me. A lot of it's actually pretty good. The great Jedi Master Yoda tells us, do or do not. There is no try. Harold Hill, from Meredith Willson's The Music Man, tells us that if we pile up enough tomorrows, we'll be left with nothing but a lot of empty yesterdays. Mahatma Gandhi tells us that we must be the change that we want to see in the world. Over the course of 18 years, we've been told a lot of things. Lin-Manuel Miranda instructed us never to throw away our shots. Troy Bolton implored us to always keep our heads in the game. And Caleb Holt reminded us that you never leave your partner, especially in a fire. Mr. Solosky dared us to be great, while Mr. Buckley dared us to marry rich and always take the lower level of the George Washington Bridge. So who's right? Whose advice do we place above all others as the motto by which we will live our lives? In my search for the perfect piece of advice, I came across something else entirely. I came across the realization that there is no perfect piece of advice. There's no set recipe for success, no magic mantra that guarantees prosperity, no prescribed path to greatness. You can't depend on a pithy maxim, no matter how universally true, to get you through your life. You can only live it the best you can, learn from your mistakes and the mistakes of those who came before you, and stand a little taller than before each time you're knocked down. Live deeply and honestly. The perfect piece of advice cannot be universally true. It can only be personally true. Find your truth and create the piece of advice that is perfect for you and you alone. And until you're able to find that, I'll leave you with this. It doesn't come from a movie or a musical, but rather from a fairly obscure English playwright named William, born in the year 1564 in the little town of Stratford-upon-Avon. This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow, as the night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man. Congratulations, class of 2016. We made it.